Hi everyone, welcome to
Hi.
today's this week's Quick Connect Live. So Quick Connect Live is a series of sessions whereby we talk about topics and just have conversations around it. The last round we spoke about the pitfalls and benefits of profiling tools, right? So from there, all of you expressed interest in, hey, what would it be like if we started exploring what the different profiling tools were like, how would they use, what's suitable, what's not suitable. So we decided to do a couple of, maybe not a couple, maybe a few more comparisons of profiling tools. And just to have a steady reference, we will use CliftonStrengths as the reference tool. So for today, we're going to compare CliftonStrengths with the next really popular tool, which is MBTI, right? So most of us know MBTI, 16 personality types, so on and so forth. It's kind of very popular. Okay, so Ethan, anything to add before we go to Miro?
I think one of the major reasons why we want to do this is because last time we talked about the strengths and weaknesses, the pros and cons of using profiling tools. And it's very important that we recognize that every profiling tool has its own biases, has its own way of looking at things. The biases is also its beauty, right? It's not saying that you are this kind of person. It means this is where you are. This is what you have been. You can improve these things if you want to. Does this resonate with you? Right? All these kind of questions are the things that we were talking about last round. And why it is so important that we are we always focus on discovering more about ourselves as the process of using the tools. So that's why when we talk about like MBTI or StrengthsFinder, is how do we use these tools? Which is why we also go back to what is good and what's not so good about each of these tools, so that we can have a better, more objective view of how what to do with each of it.
Yeah, in the last round, we also spoke about using the tools for the wrong purposes, right? Like, using CliftonStrengths for hiring is probably not the best way to use it. So that's what we have. So maybe just a quick poll for all of you. By the way, this is a meetup group, so do encourage all of you to switch on your video so we can see you right now. Can't quite tell Lindsay, William, and Ginny how things are. I know Lai Feng stepped off for a while because she's not there. Okay, so it'd be great if we could have everybody on screen. So maybe we just do a quick poll. Two questions. One, are you familiar? Okay, maybe three questions. Are you familiar with CliftonStrengths? Are you familiar with MBTI? And between the two, which do you prefer? That's all. So it's I'm familiar, I'm not familiar, I prefer which. Okay, so let's start with Faith.
I'm familiar with both. Taken both before. MBTI I've taken a few times over the years. Yeah,
Okay.
I think both of it are different. CliftonStrength is really more about identifying.
Okay, don't compare first. We'll do the comparing on Miro later. Which one do you prefer?
Which one do I prefer? CliftonStrength.
CliftonStrengths. Okay, cool. So we'll go into the comparison later, right? When you have opportunity to put in your inputs onto Miro. Lai Feng, how about you? Familiar with both? Which one do you prefer? You're muted.
Okay, I don't think I will say I am familiar with MBTI, though I've done it before. I'm more familiar with strength, so I'm not in any position to compare in that sense. Yeah. Okay. But of course, you ask me which one I prefer strength.
Awesome. I'm already like biased ready from my language. How about Lindsay?
Okay, I think I'm familiar with both. But I'm more familiar with MBTI. Okay. Yeah. Then I don't have preference. But I want to know, as in, what would be the better application? Which area they will be more relevant and useful and applicable.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Lindsay. William. Sorry, no sound wave here.
I am no sound wave. I'm familiar with both. I've used MBTI a long time ago. Okay, first of all, I'm a HR consultant as well as coach. So I deal with groups as well as individuals. For individual, if you want depth, MBTI is great because there are layers.
William, don't compare first. I just need to know familiar, not familiar, and which I prefer.
I prefer because of my different groups. So when I'm coaching one-on-one, I think MBTI is good if you go into depth. But for people who are not into such strengths, it's a lot easier to just pick up. So for me personally, I prefer strengths. Except that we can talk about it later.
Okay, thanks, William. Ginny, how about you? Are you familiar with both, and which one do you prefer?
Hi, sorry, I was muted and without the video because I was still trying to finish my dinner.
Okay, I get you. I do
Yeah,
that too.
okay. Let me just turn on my video. Hi, everybody.
Hey, Ginny. Good to see
Okay.
you.
All right. So I'm, I think, first time meeting all of you. All unfamiliar. Hello, Alex. Thanks for being the butler or the facilitator for the group. Okay, answer to your question. I am familiar with MBTI, but not like, I can use it on anybody, but I'm familiar with it. Preference is, well, we are all certified coaches, right? So our preference is definitely StrengthsFinder. But I find that MBTI is also my preference. It depends on who I speak to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. So, Ethan, can you talk them through about what we want them to do while I add in a few names?
Okay. Type in the note. Oh, so wait, let me just put this on the group chat. Faith asked a little bit of a question about, if you don't mind, allow it to be automatic. What does that mean? I'm sorry, because I'm working on this. Let me see what's happening on your side. Give me a second.
Oh, it's just that sometimes I select, then I can actually edit, but then sometimes I don't know why it changed to like the text or the circle icon on the left. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
So you have to double click in order for you to text on type text on it. So only when you see the cursor blinking, then you can use it.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
If not, you have to
Yeah. Sometimes it just disappear. I don't know why, but okay.
So you just always have to double click before you do that.
Right.
Okay, so I'm done with the names. Let me do a screen share. So everyone, what has happened is Ethan has shared a link to the Miro board, which is what you see on screen right now. So William, it would be great if you access it via your computer rather than your phone. It's going to be a lot harder to type. Okay, so each of you have been given a board with your name on it. So like this is mine, Alex Wong, with two columns, CliftonStrengths and MBTI. And one segment says strengths and likes, the other segment says weaknesses and dislikes. So what I'd like you to do, based on your own understanding, is write down what you feel are the strengths or what you like about this particular profile, or what do you feel are the weaknesses or what do you dislike about this profile. And just take about 5 minutes to do that. Ethan, I think 5 minutes is good, right?
5 minutes is good. Meanwhile, yeah, we will just continue talking because we're live streaming already.
So I'm going to set the timer for 5 minutes and just give everybody 5 minutes to just enter it. And Ethan, we can both enter while typing.
Yeah. So actually, one of the major things is actually, so I think I'm the only person in this group who would dare say that I prefer MBTI. I like both, but I will actually resonate with William on the ground of the fact that depth-wise, there is a lot of things that you can do just on the test alone with MBTI.
Okay.
And yeah, it's a little So I'm just saying.
Okay, good. I'm just noticing that I have not seen the rest in the board yet. So the rest, just double click on the link in the chat and that will bring you to the board. You should have access to it and you can just go to the board with your name and just start typing.
Yep.
So I started off with MBTI. I really loved MBTI when I started off. Almost fanatical about it. So yeah, I think it's easier to understand. I think I'm just going to talk about it as I type lah. Then I don't have to share about it anymore. So what I really like about MBTI is that it's relatively easier to understand compared to CliftonStrengths. It is popular. So when you talk about it with other people, it's easier to talk, right? So it is also relatively, okay, so it's simpler, it's popular. It does provide insights. So I do think that CliftonStrengths has more insights, but so it's quite useful in terms of, in that sense, it's easy and it's probably easier to use in groups because it's easier to understand. Only 16 types, it's easier to use in groups.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I like about MBTI.
And so I think that's the thing, right? Because of the details of MBTI that I know, I'm also gonna use it very differently from most people because once you go into like what's the functional concepts, how do you tell that you're burnt out? Are you functioning on the inferior? What are the tendencies like? Is this person actually this type versus that type? When a person answers the questions, are they functioning in their normal state, their energetic state, or are they actually functioning from the inferior state? That's what also part 2 also covers a little bit on. So that's why I'm interested.
Don't give that out now.
Okay,
we're gonna talk about it later and see how many people know about it.
Yep.
Okay, so we have another 2 more minutes, everyone. By the way, in order to type, like phone, you just double click on the sticky note. You should type in. You should be able to type into it. Yeah, just double click on the sticky note. You should be able to type into a sticky note. So it's a little bit of a learning curve. Lingjie, are you with us? Board is still blank. What I like about strengths is
I'm outside still working, so I don't think it's convenient for me to type.
Okay, sure, no problem. Okay. CliftonStrengths, what I like about it is it's highly precise.
Arguable.
It's arguable. Okay, never mind. We'll talk about it. I think it allows us to go in depth.
I use the word nuance rather than precise for that reason.
Okay, sure. But then there's the difference between precision and accuracy, right?
Which is why I prefer the word nuanced.
Never, newer. Okay. Weaknesses of strengths is it can be fairly complex.
Alex.
Yep.
I am trying to get a connect to the computer. Why don't I just tell you and help me type easier rather than take everybody's time?
We can do that a little bit later. Yeah, that's good. But we can do that a bit later. When we go to you and we can help you type along the way.
Okay, all right.
We have 20 more seconds and then we're going to see what everyone has written. I was thinking, do we have time to move it all to the board below? Probably not.
No, don't.
Okay.
We just start from here. We can do that afterwards, and then we can do that as a summary.
Yeah, I'll do that as a summary. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I'm gonna eat because I've had non-stop meetings until just now.
Yeah, GNC is quite common for us to be eating during our Quick Connect live session because it's at 8 p.m. Fairly common. Okay, so that's kind of, just in the 5 minutes that I have, I'll just explain what I've written so I give other people opportunity to share and we don't kind of like overpower it and people say that, oh, we've said everything in here, right? So in the 5 minutes, what I've written is that I like CliftonStrengths because it's very precise. The top 5 talent teams, for you to find someone the same top 5 with you in the same order occurs 1 in 3 million, as probability. And if you ignore the order, that's 1 in 278,000. So I really like how unique the profile is for each person, right? And because of that, it allows us to go in depth. What I find is challenging for CliftonStrengths is that because of its degree of complexity, it's harder for people to understand each other's profile. Like, well, I've got 34 talent teams. For me to know your 5, if your 5 are different from my 5, I need to know all 34 if I have a team of very diverse people. So how do we get everybody to remember 34 talent teams if that's the expectation? So people do find that it's a bit complex, and requires more time, and definitely it's newer. MBTI, we find that it's easier to understand, right? It's just 16 types. You're looking at pairs, there are dichotomies, right? Because it's popular, it's easier to relate and talk to other people. It does provide insights, and it's definitely easier to use in groups. Weaknesses of MBTI is that I find, the 16 types kind of stereotypes people a bit too much. The buckets are a bit too broad for my liking. So individualization, right, doesn't like too stereotypical thing. I like if it can break down into the uniqueness. Okay. Ethan, shall we go for the rest first, then come back to you?
Yeah, don't
So you
don't
can
take me first.
So we can sandwich it, right? Faith, how about you?
Actually, I realized that as I write, I think I prefer CliftonStrengths. Anyway, what I like is that it identifies our talent in the sense and know what we can do about it, and it can be applicable in many parts of our life, and it's quite easily understood in the sense. Yeah, it helps. I mean, because if you do the CliftonStrengths, it actually explains what each of the strengths means, and you can relate and actually understand your own behavior towards certain situations. So that's what I find helpful. But the thing, I think, as per any other tool, our strength can always be our weakness. So that's, in the sense, that's my dislike about it. Yeah, I think it doesn't make sense, but yeah. Anyway, so for MBTI, it's really just help to understand our personality, our character better towards real life situations. What I don't really like about it is the fact that some of the words are very big in a sense. Like, I may understand what the IN stand for, but when you talk about perspective versus I think something else, I don't really always understand it. Then every time I see the results, I still need to Google and find more. Yeah. So and also the fact that like Alex said, it's quite a general stereotype. So which I don't really agree with.
Interesting. Okay, thanks, Faith. I think Ling Xie is still out, can't join us. Lai Feng?
Oh, am I supposed to?
Yeah, share a little bit about what you have written.
Okay. Okay. I find that strength finders is so much easier for people to relate. When you talk about their strength, it's quite and it's almost like something they know in just know naturally. Okay. And I like about strength in the sense that it talks about how performance focus is performance focus. So how you can actually tap on your strength and excel in whatever you do, and the other thing is very small.
Empowering. Okay, make it bigger for you.
Okay, empowering, because I and my experience working with because I do some coaching and career coaching and all that. I find that whenever we talk about strengths, and in my experience, I have not experienced anyone walking out of a session without feeling like, wow, they feel they are empowered. They suddenly discovered that, actually something they can naturally do so well. And all they need to do is to discover it more and practice more. And I think like what Alex says is unique. It is something that just you and I feel that makes also the person feels like, yeah, I'm special. I have something that differentiate from other people just naturally. And and then it doesn't look I mean, it redefines weakness in that sense, also strength. So it's like you're not talk I think it's sufficient to say that we redefine weakness. We don't talk about weakness, but on the other hand, if you do not use your strengths correctly, appropriately, then you can also, you'll be kind of, that is your weakness in that sense, and how you can actually you can correct it in that sense.
Okay, what do you not like about CliftonStrengths?
I think sometimes it's certain terminology, or they call it nuance or something, that it can be, you need to pick up. It's not clear. Sometimes, it can be confusing, so sometimes you really need to explain certain way of interpreting your strength. The strength, I mean the top 5 and all that. I think that though what we say is easy to relate, but sometimes it can be misinterpreted, and sometimes people can say I'm so adaptability, for example, or and then the way you explain it, and somebody can walk away feeling very sad, especially, I don't know, they say it's not me, or they just don't like it, the perception of certain words being used, it seems to be, it seems to them have a negative connotation. Yeah.
How about MBTI?
I think MBTI, I don't know a lot about it, although kind of mess around with it for before strength, but it's easy to understand. I think maybe I only do those generally available kind. I think I heard that you can actually go deeper into MBTI, stage 2 of MBTI. You can actually even go much. You can read, it's like introversion, and there's many traits of introversion and whatever it is. So I don't think I have enough to talk about MBTI, whether I like it or not. But I feel that the 16 quadrant, or even you break it down to 32 or whatever it is. I think I'm more than that. I can't remember already about it. But it's still boxing people into it's like this is where you belong, But it could, and then it's like introvert. It's just like introvert. Everybody seems to, introvert, and there's this category of people. Whereas strength is that you are not you are unique. Whereas here is you are trying to find everybody, putting everybody same, yeah. So I think that's not very, to me, it's not. That's not what I like. Yeah.
Okay.
I think
awesome.
we all like
Thank
to
you.
be special.
See, that's why, Ethan, you are the last one, because you're going to talk about MBTI more, I'm pretty sure.
Well, I'm going to go through even how these things came about, the origins of each of them, but the other.
Okay. William, I know you have not typed in, but it's okay. You can mention and I'll type it in for you.
Yeah.
Let's limit the time. If not, we can talk quite long.
Thanks. Two things. One, strengths is newer, relatively. Yeah.
So is that weakness or?
Strength is newer. It's a strength because when people like new flavors. You go to the company, you ask them bring back MBTI, unless the person is totally schooled in it, they will want something new. That's one.
Okay.
If I'm in a bulk of strengths, Strengths Finder to me is good because you get to see certain aspects about yourself. Although they have 34, maybe the top 10 is good enough, and give you a perspective about how things are. I mean, it applies to both for all this personality profiling. If I can say it, they are all different facets of us. Yeah, they're different facets of us, depending how we want to look at things. Strengths to me is the words are easy, just lends itself to 5. Yeah.
Words are easy.
Just maybe 5 words. That's it.
Okay.
If I go to weakness, indeed, you don't just do this extension, not just for personal understanding, but often you use this in relation to other people. Okay, so provided the other party knows it as well, it might not be as good.
Okay, so that's the weakness of strengths, is it?
Yes, in fact, for both, MBTI and strengths. Weakness of strengths. What else can I think about it? That's the thing about strengths. I don't think about his weakness. I think about what he can bring me forward. Weakness about strengths is this: we are all schooled in Singapore where we don't look at strengths. We look at moving all our subjects up instead of just focusing on the few that we are good at. So strength is a very different perspective in a system that doesn't support it, or rather the background that we all come with.
Okay, so that would be the negative bias.
Yeah.
Okay, how about MBTI? What are the strengths or what do you like about MBTI?
MBTI, for my understanding, is the amount of maybe research done behind. They've been around for a long time. This one. So I know for this lots of correlations and samples and all these things that they do to lend credence to this thing, this MBTI itself. It's been around for more than 30 over years, I think, or more. Yeah. MBTI's strength is that there are layers. The layers is really useful if you're looking to therapy with people, if you do this. Which is also a weakness because if you go too deep, the other party might not follow you. But if you find two like-minded person, it's a wonderful instrument.
It's interesting to hear about MBTI. But okay, I think the depth will probably come in step 2, so we're kind of alluding to it a little bit.
No, it's actually there's a lot more even within the main result itself. It's just that people don't know much about it.
Okay, so you can talk about that. Thanks, William. It's okay that we move on.
Yeah, sure.
Jeannie, you have not typed in anything. You want us to do it for you? Just a quick one.
I'm still juggling with some other things in my mind. But if you don't mind, let me just share a few things. I really fully.
I lost you, Jeannie. Your audio suddenly disappeared.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, back.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
You're very soft.
Yeah, very soft.
Yeah. Me?
Yeah.
I'll just remove this thing. Maybe this is the problem.
Okay.
Yeah, I really enjoy hearing what Lai Hong said. I think most of the thoughts she already covered. But for me, especially for Clifton's strength, the strength is I really like it that the strengths or the themes that that you know or the person has kind of stay with that person. It doesn't change over the years. It shouldn't. So the themes stay. Right. In fact, it gets even more prevalent, right? It's more obvious as you mature. But MBTI, if you don't mind, I go to the other side. The strength is it's easier to understand for most people because more people are more familiar with MBTI. And in fact, it's easier to, if I can say, guess. It's like, you look at Jeannie, it's like, she must be an extrovert, because she talks a lot. But actually, in fact, I'm an introvert, So that's the strength. It's easier to guess. For Strength Finder, yes, in certain ways you can, but it can be quite difficult, quite tricky. So that's the weakness about strengths. Like what Lai Hong said, people kind of misinterpret, right? And especially the terminology, like I've got adaptability. People will ask me, what is adaptability? Maximizer. I've got maximizer. What is maximizer? That kind of thing. Then the weakness of MBTI is the opposite of what I mentioned about Strength Finder strength. That is, it changed because probably when I was young, I'm a very extrovert, but as I mature with life experiences or different phases of your life, I become an introvert. So it changes. Yeah, that's all for me.
Okay, thanks, Jeannie. I think we also have Dawn with us, right? Hey, Dawn.
You just came in.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you. So we're just talking, kind of what our likes, dislikes are for the two profiling tools, or what we feel the strengths and weaknesses are. What are your opinions of CliftonStrengths and MBTI? We just type it in as you speak.
Okay, so pardon me, my video is not working, but and I'm kind of new to this, so I'm more familiar with Clifton Strength Finder. I've taken MBTI before, but I've never been certified to run it myself. So my perspective is that of someone who's just taken the assessment. For Clifton Strengths Finder, what I enjoyed is, I think a lot of it has been mentioned, but I really like the approach about the redefinition of weakness, because something is only considered a weakness if it stands in your way of success. So I really like that. And when I use that to coach the managers at work, it also helps them see a new perspective in their team members as well. The other thing is probably also, just in the top 10, it's quite telling. You obviously don't need to go into all 34, and by just concentrating on the top 10, I'm an HR business partner, so from a work perspective, it's kind of it provides a kind of focus to help people on how they can maximize what comes naturally or more easier to them to be successful at work and thrive. So I like that focus it provides as well. The weakness, I think the language as well, it's not very well known yet. A lot of people know DISC, a lot of people know MBTI by now, but when we talk about Strength Finder, and also even after people that have taken the assessment, they really need the one-to-one feedback coaching, because just by the terminology, by saying, oh, you've got adaptability in your top 5, and then quite often I get someone say, I don't really think so. So I think the definitions are quite unique as well, so you really need to be aware of it. And you can't, in the organization, you can't really talk about it unless other people have also taken that as well.
Okay, cool. How about MBTI?
I don't really have too much exposure to MBTI. I know that for me, I've taken it once when I was 20 and once when I was 40. And the results were quite different, especially when it comes to E versus I. So I went from an extrovert to an introvert, and I went from feeling to thinking. So those are quite drastic changes. So I don't know whether you call it a weakness or a strength where a personality or a preference can change that much. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to put it in weaknesses.
Okay. I think that's all I've got.
Cool. Thanks, Don. We have Jeffer. Do you want to speak quickly?
Yep. Quickly.
Okay. Bye. We're done.
Jeffer.
It's been a long day.
2 can play that game, my friend.
Okay. Clifton Strengths, right? Okay. So
which should you prefer first? Because that's the thing that he asked all the way at the start.
Okay. Personally, I prefer Clifton Strength because I'm a sort of a big believer of personal development. So I focus on myself first before others, right? So that's why Clifton Strengths does help in that aspect. So next question is about the likes and dislikes, is it?
Or strengths and weaknesses for both of this.
Okay,
so you can just add on to what hasn't been said, so that we can save your time.
Okay, I think Clifton Strengths can go very deep.
Okay.
When you have a personalized coaching, you can go very deep. Works very well for individual who wants to do personal reflection for self-work.
Okay.
Yeah. So while yes, strengths, right, also sounds more positive in that sense, You're not like focusing on a weakness. So that is in essence what we will captivate people, Really, actually, what's my own strength, right? People uncover that. Now, in terms of weaknesses and dislikes, probably I'll say, I think very similar to others, maybe might be confusing at the start, because there's actually a lot of definitions of what strength means, like balcony and basement, and then also like there are overuse of strength actually is a weakness. Those are not really explained or not easily understood in the beginning when you first get exposed to the profile, but takes time. So I will say it takes more time to to sort of get that sense. Yeah. Yeah.
You bring great points.
Yeah. Also because I don't hear a lot of people, at least in the place where I work with, are familiar with strength. As compared to MBTI, which is a very common language where most people are very familiar with that. So in a sense that once you're not a common language, it's very hard for people to have that kind of conversation unless you start to introduce it, right? So this is more for team levels. Yeah, so I think that's also the strength of MBTI. Is very common now. So actually building on is not tough into application, because everybody at some sort of their time point have taken MBTI, right? So going into application and building on, I thought is the strength of MBTI. I'm looking at the current context. The dislike of MBTI is the people tend to forget the definitions or what the definitions really mean. So judging and perceiving, for example, introvert and extrovert is introvert and extrovert is really about the energy, right? Where you gain your source of energy, but people interpret like speaking up, and people interpret more like expressiveness, right? In that sense, right? Yeah. So
it's part of it.
Yeah, it's part of
one
it.
part of it.
No, extroversion has nothing to do with actually expressiveness.
Yes.
It does when you look into step 2. It does.
Not exactly. It's
okay.
There's a definition issue, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Then the other part is also people forget the subtypes very easily. So even though this is being taught, but every time you ask something, I'm not sure. I'm ISTJ, and what does ISTJ do lah? So they tend, even though the subtypes are like the 4 alphabet, but you have 16 different subtypes lah. So people also get confused. They don't remember the subtypes unless it's somebody similar to them or someone they deliberately think about that they work with lah. Like a JP conflict, right? That is very common. Or NS. Sometimes you have very different views. One looks at the sends the very overview of data, the big picture. The other one needs the details to feed for information, right? So you hear that from conversations, but more often than not, even people went through the courses, they forgot easily lah.
Yeah, the combinations, right?
Yeah, the combination especially.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So subtypes is the combination, right?
Yep, the 16 subtypes, the combinations.
Okay, cool. And I will finally bring the time over to Ethan, who will definitely have a lot more to say.
Let's first go into the fact that I like both. I just prefer MBTI because of one very important reason. It relates back to energy. So when I talk about energy, I don't mean spiritual energy, that kind of thing. It relates back to when we feel most excited and most alive. For me, that's what really works. In CliftonStrengths, I've heard too many people butcher it too. I've heard people butcher MBTI all the time. So I've heard people go like, I'm empathy. See, empathy is top 5, or like even though the person is clearly not being empathetic, or like these can be used on a certain level. So it's
Faith, I know why you're laughing.
Why is Faith laughing?
We had a conversation on that. So
yeah. So like people misunderstand strengths as well. So I would like to just position it a little bit differently, only because I'm trying to bring in a next level of thinking about them. I like both. I love strengths in terms of what it does. So like, for example, my number 1 is ideation. So clearly I have ADHD. Ideation is going to be within my top 5 regardless. I have a lot of the elements that are very much in there. I like how it actually made me feel about, okay, so I didn't really realize this can be particular strengths or ways of looking at things. What I really like about it is also because of the fact that the basement balcony concept, right? Is it actually a talent or is it just a theme, right? There's a lot of this thing where I think the euphemism of calling it Strengths Finder rather than Theme Finder, I call it euphemism because it's putting it too positive in some sense, makes people kind of delusional about their strengths in some sense too. So that's where I have a little bit of disagreement. And
You,
then
you
on-
find that the branding kind of misrepresents the tool, is it?
Yes, it does. People keep on thinking it's my strength. It's no. You're in bulk, you're in basement right now. Do not say it's a strength. It's just a theme. Right. So especially after I learned it more from you, right? I realized, okay, cool. And this is where I actually find a lot of similarities between MBTI and CliftonStrengths. Actually, that's another long story on its own. But so I liked a lot of elements, the 34 different things. The other interesting part that I disagree with for CliftonStrengths from the start was how it came about. But how it evolved is a different story, which is why when you talk about the founders, the builders profile thing,
BP10.
right? Yeah,
BP10, builder profile.
yeah,
10.
I also have my builder profile up. So
Yeah.
I disagree with the origins. I like how they evolved it from there.
Okay.
Was done by reverse statistics. So it's done by regression theories, testing out people, what are strengths in people's lives. So like out of 300 plus, right, then they reduce it down to that certain level. So I disagree with such behaviors only because each person has a different definition. Even if you read the description of the words, you're going to have different definitions. Even when you do a statistics-based approach, you're not going to really get a lot of details out. But what happened afterwards, which was actually really honing down into utilizing it as an intervention, is something that I really like a lot. The understanding of the maturity, the understanding of the basement and balcony, the understanding of the leadership profiles. These are added layers on top that came after CliftonStrengths Finder on its own. To me,
I think that came after people get coaching, right? So there's only that degree of understanding you can get from the book and profile.
yes,
But when you actually go through, say, a workshop or get coached, then you start to understand about how your talent team show up, both in terms of raw, mature, balcony basements. And, even for strengths coaches, some people make a distinction and some people don't. So for those of you who are certified, right, you will realize that most people don't make a distinction between raw, mature, balcony basement. So if your talent team is raw, most people say it's in the basement. If your talent team is mature, then you say it's more in balcony. But I see it differently, and then I make my own distinction between the two. So I think even when you move from coach to coach, the application of it does get a bit nuanced in terms of how we use it. So that differences does come in when it comes to strengths.
Yep. And when we go about this, the reason why I have a disagreement with it on the statistic level is because the terms like responsibility, empathy, maximizer, optimizer, all these different terms are like gray areas to most people when they're utilizing it or they're doing when they try to understand it. What happens is that for me, like a lot of these elements are like how to describe, people don't understand and utilize it the right way because the way the words were being used. I'm not saying strengths finders issue. I'm saying on application level, a lot of people will misunderstand.
Yeah. So I think the difference between so we get this quite a lot when we coach people, right? The difference between the word as a talent team and the word as a dictionary meaning. Right. So for example, the word discipline. Most people think, discipline is when I can, grit my teeth and get it done. But that's not what it means in the CliftonStrengths talent, right? As a CliftonStrengths talent is about structure.
Yes.
About that efficiency through structure, learning, that consistency, being planned, but also in its basement a bit of too much rigidity, right? Inability to change if you don't have other talent teams that allows you to supplement that. So CliftonStrengths does have that challenge of needing people to not jump to conclusion that they understand the meaning of that word until they read the report. And I've got that quite a bit. Like consistency is the other one, right? It's like, I'm very consistent. No, that's not what I mean. Consistency is about fairness, right? Yes. So I get that quite a bit. And then we go like, guys, look, don't just read the word and think of it as the dictionary meaning. That's not what it is. Please read your report, understand what the definition of it is.
It's not even dictionary meaning, it's even colloquial meaning, because consistency can come in so many forms. The consistency of the bread, the consistency of the porridge. What does that mean?
So I do think that maybe at some sense, in terms of, they have 34 words they need to find to describe the talent teams, right? So maybe the nuancing, the words, if when they created it, could have been a bit nicer. Like consistency, they renamed some of the talent teams from version 1.0 to 2.0, right? So consistency used to be called fairness.
which is kind of accurate.
or fair or something like that. So I mean, that's kind of how they changed some of the things along the way. Yeah, so that's where I do agree with you that sometimes it can get a bit confusing for CliftonStrengths.
Yeah, which is why it makes it very well for individual realization or reflection, right? Because it can provide depth because of the 34 talent teams. The only thing is like what Ethan said, right? I mean, you really need a lot of support to understand from a coaching perspective, because you're not only talking about your top 5. Like once you top 5 already got multiple combinations, right? Which one comes first, second, third? Then you have your top 10 to look at. That gets even more complex. So if as an individual, as I reflect with a coach, of course I get a lot of insight because individual, right? But then when it comes to teams, that gets a bit more complicated. Where I feel then the subtype of the 4 MBTI might be slightly easier because it's more sticky lah.
Easier to understand,
easier
to
for
remember.
Teamwork, right? I mean, rather than individual lah. So that's the distinction I'm seeing lah.
So I think that I just want to add on, right? Like just exactly why like it's useful, but at the same time it's very easy to misunderstand. Again, it's also becoming another thing, right? So I have empathy in my top 5. You don't have. You have a problem. I mean,
I think it can be very misused. So the report itself has also evolved over time, right? In the past, Gallup used to provide the intensity bars.
Yes.
Right. So I've never seen it before, but people from Gallup told me that they used to have it, and they started removing it because people went like, "Oh, my empathy is higher than your empathy." I was like, but that's not the point. So people misuse it. You give them more information that's required, and then so they removed it, right? And it has become the version that it is today. And so I think so. Ethan, just one conscious of time. The couple of more things that we want to do is like show them some sample reports and talk a little bit about what.
Then we can go to MBTI a bit more after showing the reports.
Yeah. So let's do that. Let me share where's my report? Sorry guys, give me a sec. What has happened here? Okay. So I'm just going to very quickly share a number of the reports that we have. We're going to start a little bit with the Strengths Finder reports. So you start off, you do have what we call your signature talent teams or signature team report.
Wow, 1999.
Yes, it's Don Clifton's report. So you do have your top 5 in your signature team report. And what it does is it gives you the generic description of the talent teams. So what this means is that anyone who sees this, have individualization, this would be the exact same description that they have. The other one that they have is this thing they call the Strengths Insight report. So the Strengths Insight report is great in the sense that it is personalized. So see your personalized strengths insights. So what it does is it takes all the answers that you have thrown into the questionnaire, and it generates and churns out this thing that describes you personally. So most people will find that the personalized report resonates a lot more with them because it's personalized to you. And that's one of the things that I really love about the CliftonStrengths report is this personalized report part, right? Unfortunately, the personalized report only exists for your top 5 strengths. Like, how great it would be if you give you personalized report for top 10, right? That would be like, awesome. But no, only have top 5. But that's in and of itself is really quite great. And then if you decide to go further and you unlock your full 34, then you do get this, what they call the CliftonStrengths 34 report, which gives you your sequence. They give you lots of descriptions about what to look at. There are some questions on what to do, and then they explain why it's unique. The unique one is the same as your Strengths Insight report. So they just repurpose the same description, right? But what they do have is your action guide of what you can do to maximize the talent team that you have, right? So what do you do, what do you watch out for, and things like that. So that is those are really, really great stuff that I find the CliftonStrengths 34 has. Now, not in your report. If you unlock your full 34, Gallup actually gives you a e-learning course in their platform, whereby you can go answer some questions, play around, understand your own talent teams better. So that's the other thing on top of the report that I really like. I don't think there's something like that for MBTI that kind of tells you, work through your talent teams to help you gain a better understanding, right? Kind of a workshop-y kind of a thing.
You do have it on 16 personalities if you buy it.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that, but thanks. So that's what we have for CliftonStrengths, and I do really like the full 34, and they will give you nice graphs like your CliftonStrengths by domain, what actions can you take, so on and so forth. So this is CliftonStrengths. I'm going to move off to MBTI a little bit. So if you go to the Myers-Briggs company, you can find a whole list of sample reports on your own. So that's where you can go find them. I've opened up one of the Myers-Briggs Step 1 report. So Step 1 basically gives you where are you on the 4 pairs, and then what is your subtype, right? Which of the 16 types are you? So in this particular case, it's INTP. So it talks about probability of index, what does it look like, what does it mean, and a couple of interpretation of what the characteristics are, how do they relate to other people and things like that. So I think most people are kind of familiar with the MBTI Step 1. In fact, most of the time when people talk about MBTI, they think of Step 1. And most people, probably aren't aware that there is a Step 2, which is very interesting, right? So while I keep on telling people, look, in MBTI, you only have 16 types, so that I can upplay CliftonStrengths. But in reality, if you look at the Step 2 of the MBTI, under each pair, they have 5 facets, right? So again, disclaimer, I'm not certified in MBTI, but I'm going to give you an example of a facet of the extroversion, introversion, right? So a person who is, I have no idea whether this guy is introverted or extroverted. Okay, I think this guy is extroverted. So you'll see that under the extroversion, introversion report, there are 5 facets. So in this case, it's initiating versus receiving, expressive versus contained, gregarious, I think of you, Ethan, because of your emergenetics, intimate, active, reflective, enthusiastic, and quiet. So there are times when people go through the MBTI and go like, this one doesn't quite describe me because I'm a little bit like that. One of the explanations is that they could have a subtype that is out of preference. So in this particular case, if you look at this report, right, this guy is likely extroverted. That's why this is colored. So I think it's extroverted. But he has 2 facets which are out of preference. So this is a extroverted person who has a higher preference for receiving than initiating.
Do you prefer to use my profile rather than actual like a fake profile?
You want to share? You have it?
Yeah, I can share my profile. Yeah, I'll just share my profile.
Okay, I'll go share.
Yeah, I'll just download.
Then that will make it a little bit more real. So for those of you who okay, how many of you are seeing the type 2 for the first time? Just raise your hand so I know. Okay, cool. So I personally found type 2 to be quite insightful for getting a little bit deeper into the MBTI. Okay, Ethan, there we go.
Yep. So type 2 comes together with type 1 if you do it. So wait, hold on. Computer hanging a bit. So I think one of the major things about this exercise for me when I found out that there was type 2 was actually very interestingly that okay, I think this is because it's a very big file. My Acrobat reader is hanging.
It's not showing.
It's not showing?
I mean, I'm seeing it, but I don't see your report.
Okay, do you see this part?
Yes, introversion, extroversion.
Okay, so I'm an ENTP through and through. One of the reasons why I understand this thing pretty well is because for me, I view MBTI with a perspective of it being instinctive, upbringing based, cognitive responses. So when I go back to Jung, it's a tendency of your thinking. It doesn't mean that you are that person. So so this also fits with my emergenetics of the third being for expressiveness. if you see my results right now, right? So in extroversion, right? Like, so it is really where do we initiate with other people, whether we want to express more or do we want to control and be more private about what we're talking about. Gregarious, like he says. Okay, so what happens is that in part at step 2, a lot of these elements is about how in preference or out of preference it is. Because I'm an E in the first place, I'm an extrovert in the first place. If the extroversion is out of preference, I will actually lose energy from this. That's what I've actually learned from a coach that actually went through this process with me. So there's sometimes we're talking about this because it's directing energy towards the outer world versus directing energy towards the inner world. So I might actually have certain traits that, like just now the sample report, you saw some of the person who is out of preference in terms of some of the things. They would actually have certain behaviors and tendencies that would be out of preference that actually causes them to so-called lose energy, according to the step 2. Which is why I quite like the way to look at this. So for example, I need interaction, I want contact, I like to listen and speak. I don't need to be the onlooker or all these kind of different things, like where I gain the most of my energy. So for example, if I was in the middle of a meeting where I am just purely the onlooker, I will fall asleep. Which is also one of the reasons why I would like to engage on such a meeting, because literally that's how I gain energy. So this is how it really responds. Some people like to stay away from the front and just enjoy watching what's happening. They gain a lot of energy from that. So that's also a lot of ways of looking at this. And then enthusiasm, right? So again, I'm classic in this sense. So if you look at this, right, so in preference. So when you talk about step 2, this actually explains also some of the people's behaviors. It actually is the form of what we term as maturity in MBTI. So when you want to talk about MBTI and when you talk about this, right, it's very interesting for me because in MBTI, then there's also how mature you are in this one profile that you're in. And so we go back to this, right? So intuition, for example, I'm purely abstract thought. I don't like concrete thoughts. Again, Jeffer, this links back to my emergenetics. Imaginative, conceptual, theoretical, original versus realistic, practical, experiential, traditional. So these are all the preferences I have that defines me as an intuitive person. Like, for example, if I talk about abstract concepts, I get energized. If you tell me concrete stuff, like what to do next, what we're going to do, and this is step by step, let's do this step, then this step, then this step in recipe, I will die. Energetically, I will die. So it's this kind of things that I would like about MBTI once you touch the step 2. So this is why it's very useful for me. Also, once I recognize that this is a way of looking at myself. Oh, okay. Bye.
Okay, Don. No problem. Hope you find a space for yourself.
Guys, bye.
See you.
Yeah. So this is all about, like, so if you notice, right, there's like focus of attention. Do I focus on abstract knowledge? How information is used? Do I like to imagine more or do I like to actually look for more realistic matter of fact stuff?
Hey, your report is boring.
Because
it's
I'm very
preference.
Because I spend a lot of time being comfortable with myself. So
Okay.
I did a lot of things. So everything, like, but I like to explain this because I experience it personally, right? And like I'm not the most empathetic listener before I learned the skills of being empathetic. So if you look at empathy in my strength right now is 23. If you see here, I'm also not considered empathetic. However, I spend a lot of time identifying people's emotions, resonating with them, using logic and clarity as a way of having the conversation. If the person wallows in pity, I cannot take it, right? I need to find a way to have a conversation about more thinking stuff, or how do you find that feeling means to you, right? That kind of stuff. Then this is where it's very interesting because my preferences doesn't mean my behavior. I can speak reasonably and compassionately. I can do questioning. I can say, again, right, the reason why I'm using my report is because then you can see my tendencies as a person comes out with a report that is coming out over here. Yeah. So when it's out of preference, it means that you're actually not functioning at your optimal if you when you're actually in that space. That means you might actually feel a drain in energy whenever you're in that space. That's what MBTI keeps on shouting and screaming about. So that's why for me it's very interesting with the step 2. Again, if you look at my P, it's very clear.
Energy is just the EI preference, right?
No,
it's not for all the 4
thinking preferences also. So this is where that's the thing, because it actually goes back to thinking preferences as well. So EI goes back to whether is it outside or inside. NS is whether I like abstract or factual. TF is whether I like logical or feelings based. So if a person was just to wallow in self-pity for the next half an hour, I will cry. I would be in a terrible mood. I will drain my energy out of my system and completely die at the moment, right? So that's how it functions for me. So if I look at MBTI in that format, it changes the way I look at it. And then we also look at this, right? Like I can't stand wearing shirt and tie. Even though I worked as a musician, I was going to the hospitals as a medical student. I hated the shirt and tie. If you look at everything that I am over here, I can't stand systems. I can't stand being too planned out. I like to 临时抱佛脚, like the last minute pull out everything.
Sorry, I don't understand. For this J, right, it's supposed to be judging, but based on this step 2, it's like, it's not really judging, but it's like a very systematic way of doing things, which is like so different from what we understand originally.
So
exactly.
Judging, I think the judging definition is about, people who prefer plans, people who have, there's a right way of doing things.
The definition is decisiveness and closure, right?
Yeah, that's why it's very different from, we talk about it shouldn't be about the dictionary and all that, but unless we really have a in-depth report to understand what that J means, it doesn't make sense to us.
Yeah, but it costs $80 lah.
Yeah. See, Ethan, the wording issue is not just for CliftonStrengths.
No, I agree. No, I didn't say it's only for CliftonStrengths. The reason why I do like MBTI is because most of the words are actually outside of the common dictionary, and therefore you're forced to understand. So that's something I agree and disagree with. So I like abstract terms because, again, but if you look at my definition here, I love abstract terms.
High end. Okay.
So if you look at it, right, this is also part of the humor, right? Like once we look at MBTI with this perspective, and like if I always look at it as, does it drain my energy? Do I spend more time in the area? These are my preferences. It changes the way we look at even an MBTI report. I love StrengthsFinder as well because StrengthsFinder allows me to go into the details of why I have these tendencies and how I think about things. But MBTI has this little bits of the things where, like that's why I always drain my energy whenever I talk to people like this, right? Like because when I talk to a person who's always looking for the next step and then forget about abstract concepts, I'll die, right? A person just goes like, I told what? And it's like, where's the logic, right?
Okay, so I think we've covered quite a bit in terms of, okay, I'm conscious we have 20 minutes left. So we covered quite a little bit of what the reports look like. We've covered what we like or dislike in terms of strengths and weakness, and kind of addressed quite a bit of where both reports are. I was thinking we could use the next 10 minutes to talk a little bit about how these reports are used, or kind of the mindset behind it, right? And then we can use the last 10 minutes to close. So when I started out with MBTI, one of the things that I didn't quite like about it was that it seemed to indicate that we need to learn to be the opposite of who we are. So it's like, if you're an introvert, then too bad, this is an extroverted, you need to learn to be more extroverted. You need to deal with it, right? If you are very thinking, you need to take care of someone else's feelings. You need to think of how you can take care of feelings more. And if you are feeling, you feel a lot, you need to learn how to put up that shield so that you don't get too personal or feel personally attacked by people. So
who taught you this, man? The person who taught you MBTI is telling you all the wrong things in MBTI.
Okay, so that's kind of where I heard and what my exposure to MBTI was. So maybe Ethan or even William, you have a different way that you use MBTI, or how, I
hear two of you. I like what you shared. I think that was really super. But but I couldn't help looking at the strengths behind you. Both of you are learners, you're ideators, and it is epiphany to know yourself. It is tremendous. But however, let's look at in terms of the roles that we play. For example, if Ethan, I assume you're a medical doctor.
I quit medical school, so no.
Yeah, because you carry on, and you have patients who can't utter this kind of abstract things, or I understand, you're going to struggle. Maybe as a medical researcher, you have done tremendously well, for example. So I think it helps us understand ourselves. And if we have known this earlier, maybe there are paths that we want to choose. Yeah, which I think you have done, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. And for Alex, I think you are totally a learner. And you're very strategic about it. Yeah. But if I want you to connect this to someone who comes to you with a problem as a coachee, I think you're going to struggle. Yeah, because some of this can be at the thinking level, very cerebral. Yeah. So no, I like the depth that you went to. It was tremendous just listening to two of you, because I was just listening to the energy level. I was listening to the passion you went into, the depth. You can even question the creator of all these reports. Indeed, they are generic, but stories are meant to be told. I'm sure Lifeform knows career coaching as well. It is also got to match to the other party that we're talking to. And how do we use this to bring value to them? Yeah, I mean, this is what I do. Anyway. That's what I do. I love to go and wallow in the clouds about all this, which are very useful. And it's really, really wonderful to understand it to that degree. Then I lost my client. So it was very interesting, because for me, for my strengths, I used to have I used to have context. And I realized that 10 or 15 years later, it changed. So also, I think, was it Lifeform or somebody mentioned about as you get older, actually you change. You change. To me, since I'm older now, it is connecting to people and helping them to grow. So I've given up who I choose to believe, who I choose to understand of myself, but more how I can help them to move on. Yeah. So that's from a practice angle. That's from a practice angle. Yeah. So this is tremendous. I mean, going through, you guys really unravel all the onion pieces, the layers. It's super. It's super. Thank you. I got continue for.
Thank you,
Thanks, William. We kind of enjoy it. You see us banter and at times poke fun at each other, right? So that's how we are.
So tremendous. I mean, I really enjoyed it. Yeah. You go to a more fellow who teach you this, they just go line by line as though they are God. Yeah. But here really, I think you link back to personally who you are, how you have been, journeys that you've gone through, and finally getting to understand from these reports. I think it's tremendous. It's tremendous.
Can I just share a little bit? William, you mentioned that you've got your woo, and you said that it has disappeared. I can assure you, it didn't disappear. It's just that perhaps it's not in your top 5. Yeah, not the top 5. You're not, maybe not even the top 10, but it is still there. So you're a natural woo, so it won't disappear. So for Ethan, I could really sense, in fact, everybody could really feel your excitement when you share about your MBTI report, right? So I've got mine, and I think earlier on with the earlier exercise on the strengths and the likes and dislikes, between the Strength Finder and MBTI, I did share that for MBTI, my report changed. Ethan, you're much younger than me. Okay, so when I first did the MBTI, my report, I was a ENTP. And now I'm INFJ. So
wow.
It is very different. So the only thing that didn't change was the N. So can you imagine, the change is pretty great. And when I look at the type 2, most of the results are all in the mid zone. It's like, so I'm a unique case. So it's not extreme left or extreme right, but it's like kind of like that, And one of the MBTI trained coach was saying that it's because of the life experiences I've been through, and 20 years later when I do this report, it's different. And Ethan, it will be very interesting 20 years later.
I look
you
forward.
do this report. Yeah. I mean, for me, I realized that, I'm definitely much less gung-ho, than I was. Yeah. So, and the way I see things, a lot of perspectives that I see now is really different. And I think it's because of you maturing, you growing, and also the experiences that you've gone through. So that's why I say for MBTI, I do love it, but I also realize that it does change.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to share.
But by definition, they say that after 30, you don't change for most personality profiling. Essentially because you get into the job and then you stay in the job for the rest of your life. And then molds you, for example. Yeah.
Actually, because MBTI is also measuring in a sense of preference, right? So in preference, preference do change. I mean, in particular, like because it's self-rated score, right? So based on the last talk we have, right, it's self-rated. So the way you rate yourself at that moment also will determine the score. You have life crisis, it will also determine your score. You have pregnancy, it will also change your score. If you've really been through a traumatic experience through work mid-career, it will also change. And I think the way I see it is more like during at a moment where I take that snapshot, right? Is it useful for me? At that moment in time, right? If it's useful, not only for myself, right? For myself, it's personal development. How about for understanding others and then working with others? Because we always go in and out of different groups and teams, right? Through our careers, we don't stay in a job anymore. And during the moment, like which one does help lah? I think last conversation we had with Ethan and Alex, we shared about like there are actually all these reports sometimes looks like metaphors, right? So they are the ways for you to just put a right language to describe. But if it's too rigid at times, right, the language means most likely you are already fixed into that model lah, or you already sort of put yourself as an identity rather than actually it's a preference. And therefore that's why here we are talking about like, hey, actually we're exploring I think one of the things we are looking at the context in which we're comparing based on StrengthsFinder as a tool as compared to MBTI. But nonetheless, I think what I'm hearing from many of you is the context do matters, where people are at. And maybe at that point in time, MBTI or StrengthsFinder might not speak to that person lah. So that's the practice side of the things when we use the tool lah.
What do you do, Jacob?
I do leadership development design work in civil service. Yeah, so I use a bit of some of these profiles as well.
You know what you mentioned was so true. You know, when I was in my first job with a Dutch MNC, they almost wanted to use this for recruitment. Yeah. So the first thought that came to me as a young graduate was fortune telling. Finding you at the moment what you are then, you know. Yeah, but you're right. Context matters. Situations you are in matters, and all that. Yeah. So actually, maybe the question then is all these are all called personality profiles. So if it's a personality profile, that means personality change, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it's also because today people change jobs and industries.
Yes.
In the past, we stayed in the same job for a long time.
But I think that's also where we want to define personality, right? Like, because actually the proper term right now is psychometric, right? It's your thinking tendencies. So that's, I think that's what the proper term is. So for me, I go back to the thinking tendencies concept, right? So currently I have this thinking tendencies also because of my training, also because of the way that I was brought up, also because it's flexed a lot. Like in StrengthsFinder, right? Like ideation is flexed a lot for me because I'm constantly in ideation-based spaces. I do arts-related work. I do a lot of consultancy-based work, which requires a lot of ideation and a lot of understanding of things. So it's super flexed. If I stop flexing it, it might not be in top 5. It might go down a bit further, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
But more often than not, you're also drawn to activities that allows you to use your top 5 anyway. So it's very like sometimes people say it kind of drops, but they find that even if they do not have opportunity to do it, they tend to feel less energized compared to when they have opportunity to do it. So I don't think the profile changes as much. It's more of, well, do you actually know who you are? And do you have the opportunity to fully express the totality of who you are? With regards to change, I do think that your profiles can change, but I also think that and correct me if I'm wrong, Ethan. So from a neurological development point of view, right? When we're younger, we have all the neurological connections, and then some of them start to decay, and then the myelin starts to grow along different neurons that actually creates patterns of thinking, right? So your neurons fire off in a certain way, and so I think that is part of what creates personality, right? The way we think becomes habitual and patterned. So for most people, once they reach about the age of 21, that tends not to change, right?
Actually, puberty goes all the way till 28.
Okay. Really? Yeah.
Neurologically. So, but I think from what I understand, past 21-ish, they tend to start to settle, right?
Depends on culture. So the 21 years old concept came about during the eras where universities ended at 21. You're starting to go to work. You're starting to do whatever. Lately, it's been pushed back further and further. It's a recent study. It's like 21. You're right. If this was in the 70s.
But we do have a certain time when our pattern tends not to change. Right?
Stabilizes.
It kind of stabilizes, right? So I think that most of the time that means that it doesn't change that much. It's possible to change. Like if there's a life-changing event that shocks your entire system, then it's possible to change your personality or your patterns of thinking.
Yes.
But more often than not, it tends to remain the same.
So I mean, I think for me, the beautiful thing about all these personality tests, and we talked about it last time, right? Are you doing it instinctively, or are you doing it by trying to give the right answers? That's also a question. Then the next level about this is also how much thoughts, Jeffrey was saying, right? If people know MBTI, there's the inferior function. So if you're functioning on the inferior, that means you're actually out of preference the whole time. You're going to be constantly actually giving the opposite answer of who you are. So that changes the ball game altogether. So for me, when I learn these things, it becomes like so if it really depends on too many contexts, too many concepts, personality is in my head has never been a fixed thing. It's always been a what am I today? What am I going to learn about myself today? And this is where I think we agree about this, which is the perspective of ourselves matters more than even what the test says.
Yeah. You know the evidences to support what you think, what you are. Alex, I don't see very much empathy tonight. I see a lot of. I don't see a lot of your empathy being in play tonight. I see a lot of learner and developer and strategist.
I'm so empathetic. Can't you tell the way that I, run this session with Ethan? My empathy is oozing.
He's empathizing with me, so he's excited as well.
I think part of what I do, so also NLP trained, right? I tend to mirror and pace people quite a bit. So when I speak to different people, the way that I speak changes and evolves is quite instinctive. I would say it's my individualization coupled with a bit of NLP training. So it's kind of different. So William, the way that you have seen me during the Soundwave accreditation would be very different from how you see me today with Ethan when I converse, or even when I converse with different people. I tend to mirror. I was going to personalize my
different facets of you.
Yeah, I tend to personalize my conversation and the way that I relate to people. So it's different that way. Okay, we have about 5 minutes left. I thought let's do this. Shall we go around and have everybody share what their takeaway from today's session is? And then, as usual, I'll hand the time over to Ethan to just sum everything up. Ethan, you are our master summarizer. So, okay, let's go the opposite direction, right? So, Ling Jie, you're on my screen at the bottom, probably because your video is off. But would you like to share your biggest takeaway?
My biggest takeaway is I cannot remember exactly what you all shared just now, but is the self or the preference of the self is more important than the profiling tool. Yeah, whatever it is. Yeah, I don't fully comprehend it, but it sparked some thinking in me. Yeah.
So it's the recognition that the profiles that you have reveals your preferences, not your identity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Ling Jie. William, your biggest takeaway?
I was seeing the different people talking. Jeff, you were very measured, and that was great. I saw Alex, you very facilitative. I saw the stoicism of Lai Fong, yeah, and realizing your profile change, amazing, coming to terms, and Ethan, you're a breath of fresh air.
Thank you.
Yeah. So seeing your enthusiasm, your interest in just delving into this tremendous. It's really a learning time.
Oh, thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, William. So your biggest takeaway is Ethan.
No,
breath air. Breathe more now. Breathe.
Poor Alex. No. All of you.
Sorry. Okay. Thanks, William.
Well, you were shooting at William really hard, man.
Really?
Alex, I'm sorry.
That's because I know him.
Conversation with you, Alex. I'll give my 2 cents worth.
Okay, sure.
So William, what's your top 5?
My top 5. I'm now developer. You have all just gone into one domain. Developer, individualization, common with a number of you. That one is connectiveness. Then the other one is positivity. This was very amazing because I met David Lim in my class, the mountaineer, and he said, William, when I go to Mount Kilimanjaro, the last part was the worst. He says, if anybody in the team that I'll bring will be you. When everybody's giving up. So I never knew that strength was interesting. So I'm just trying to figure out how do I use this. And so I realized in coaching, often I land up with very desponding coaches. Yeah. So life has its way of bringing things to a certain, you bring it up and then, yeah. The last one is adaptability.
Cool.
Nice. Thanks, William. Joseph. I'm just going around my screen. So.
Okay. I mean, definitely much more clearer in terms of the tool and the usage. At least even more clearer now, right? So I think as someone who have experienced both profile, right, I've seen the great aspect of StrengthsFinder as well. Especially the biggest insight was my responsibility, right? I realized that's my way of taking action. So I always commit to people, I'll do things, right? Then say yes. Then until I can't do it lah. Until one day it's no lah. But that has always been a pattern that I've always been using in the way I do things or motivate myself to do things. Because the rest of it is really thinking, right? So think too much, never take action. So responsibility is that, okay, deadline reaching, I committed to someone that I mentioned I'll deliver. So that's the dialogue I have with myself. And in the sense of MBTI, the other benefits, and it's also like within teams, is currently still very effective because people who are like ISFP in my team, right, need to hear the feeling. Sometimes they just need to rant, right, out of their system. And the fact that you know that because of their preference and giving them that space to do that allows them to recover, right? So like what Ethan said about energy, right? Once they ran it out, they gain back that level of energy because all they express their emotions, how they really feel about things. And then they got back their feet, right? And then as an INTJ, if I'm not familiar with that opposite dimension, I would have gone like, oh, that's weird. That's not logical. Right. So I do see both benefits of both sides. And that's my key takeaway is really going back to at a moment in time how useful it is. If it's useful for you, then use it. If it's not useful for you anymore and it's hindering you, then reflect on it, think twice whether it's really helping you out.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thanks. Jeannie?
Okay, maybe before I share before I share the takeaway, let you know my top 5 if you are interested.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, achiever is top, relator,
Wow. Related.
maximizer, responsibility, and adaptability.
Hey, if I common one.
Sorry?
Yeah, the first I find a common strength.
Okay. All right. My takeaway is, both Strength Finder and MBTI both are very useful. So by no means I'm devaluing the other, or one or the other. Is both are very important. Both are very useful. And lastly, is I can certainly learn from all of you. All of you are really knowledgeable, and I can leverage on all your strengths and your knowledge. Yeah. So thanks for this first session that I've just joined.
Please join us more often. And if you'd like to learn more about the Elite membership, we can talk about that as well. Lifo, biggest takeaway?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is like to know that MBTI can change in terms of the, you can be totally opposite. I mean, it's amazing, Jeannie. You can from a T to a F. That is quite drastic. Probably it can happen. I think because at the end of the day, it's contextual. And it also depends on what you the job you're in. So you are always forced to feel for people. Then the logic part has to put behind the window. So
Yeah, you know what I reckon? It's because of my high adaptability.
yeah.
I'm able to adjust and change, with situations. Yeah.
That's why everything is midpoint, right?
Yeah. So I'm like, I see the situation, and where there's change, and I'm one who embraces change. It's like, come on.
So I think it's interesting because I did MBTI, at different phases of my life, and I think I'm a very, very logical person. So like Ethan, if my T is to the extreme, it's like if there is 1 to 10, I'm 10 on the T at one point of my life, and I think that's probably because I was in a very high tech environment, and then I always have to, and I work a lot with men. So I'm highly logical, and you have to be rational. You cannot cry in front of men, right? So I'm extremely T. And then fast forward, and then some years later, and probably like you, Jeannie, you say, 20 years later, you take that again. My F almost go to the mid, and my T is almost go to the middle. I mean, I'm still a T, but it went to the middle, and probably because, and during that period of time, I work a lot with people, and I switched my career to coaching and recruitment and all that, and I'm forced to size people up and then listen a lot and all that. So I think my T and F is the biggest shift. The rest are quite intact. So it's interesting when you point that out, and I thought it's true. MBTI, you can actually see that your preference do change. On the other hand, I think Strength Finder is more stable in terms of what you naturally do well. And it could be basement and balcony, but I think by and large, when you do the assessment, it doesn't change very much. The sequence does maybe shift in a top 10, but I think because that's your natural strength, it will not shift that much. Yeah, so William, your top 5 I can see your developer is everywhere. Your positivity is maybe your woo is now in your possibility.
You see
I
the
start.
ENF. I also have the same change.
Yeah, yeah.
ENF. I need to download data analytics and all, etc. Then I switch to helping skills.
I'm starting to see his Soundwave profile also. So, William, your suggesting voice and telling voice quite high.
I'm so easily read, right? Yeah, I'm
Okay,
I was articulating, practicing.
yes, I could see that. Okay, let's move on to Faith. Faith, biggest takeaway?
I think for strengths finder is really to know that it's like IQ is stable and it typically does not change much. We can actually use it and for it to become a skill and use it in our life if we want to. Otherwise, knowing what you have as a talent yet not doing anything about it, then it's kind of useless. So it's the intent behind of each test that you do. And I think it's and I think it matters the state of mind when we do any kind of test, regardless whether it's personality, IQ, EQ, so on and so forth. Yeah, if today when you're feeling very upset and everything, then obviously it will actually affect the results you're doing today. So I guess that helps me to understand why sometimes my results can vary in a couple of months. Yeah, to really reflect on my state of mind when I do it. So I mean, and at the end of the day, I see all these tests as a reflection of who we are today, but it should not be a predictor of how we will continue to be in the coming weeks. Yeah, it's really up to you to have this self-awareness and then see how you want to progress on in life. Do not let it be something that limit you. Like some people would say, this person very extrovert, so let her do everything, that kind of thing. Yeah, give her roles to do, blah, blah, blah. But to really not let these results constrain us, but instead let it spur us further in our race. That's it.
And I think with understanding of people's profile, we can actually help to place them in positions where they can thrive, right? So for people who love to talk, for example, or high positivity, high adaptability, high developer. Yes, talking about William. Okay. So basically, anyone with a certain profiling tool, you might want to place them on the front end to do maybe hospitality, right? Because they enjoy certain things. So it's not so much stereotyping, but making use of the knowledge effectively so that people can be best versions of themselves.
That's the hard part. Thank you very much.
So my biggest takeaway is when Ethan was sharing about the out of preference. So I've always thought of our preference as just, it's our preference, like it describes why I behave in a certain way or why people cannot explain a certain characteristics of my MBTI profile that can be seen in a type 2. So the sharing that, the out of preference can actually zap energy out of you was a new thought for me. And I thought that was interesting. I would like to share one thing before I pass on to Ethan, who will very quickly close for us. So
as quick as I can, yes.
Recently, I listened to a podcast and the person talked about MBTI. So I like the way the person used it. And she said this, right? She said, understanding your profile allows you to, feed that aspect of you so that you can grow from that position. So she was talking about things like if you're introverted, you need your personal time and all this. So you meet that aspect of you. And through meeting that aspect of you, allow you to stretch to the other side. So I thought that was a very interesting way of using MBTI. That's a lot more aligned with the strengths philosophy, which is being more of who you are rather than who you're not. So I know that MBTI has that let's look at the opposite end of the spectrum thing, or stretching to the opposite side. But looking at it from the let's feel and meet who you are first so that you can stretch. I like that whole mindset a lot better than how I have traditionally been taught about MBTI. So that is what I have. And Ethan, over to you.
Actually, have we gotten Jeffers' thoughts?
Yes, we did.
We haven't.
Yes, we have.
Oh yeah, he's gotten. Oh, yeah, sorry. You got it. We got it damn early, but because the cycle. Okay, cool. Never mind. I shall talk. So I think one of the I think it's great. This session was great also because got to hear so many people. Like clearly everybody here, and this is what StrengthsFinder group, right? Everybody here loves StrengthsFinder. First up, that's the most important thing that came out like straight off the bat. But I think the other interesting part is like everybody has a different reason, different things. Actually, what I would like to summarize is it's all down to the philosophy of how you use these things. People love StrengthsFinder because A, the name, right? B, the aspect of looking at it as strengths. The struggles on both sides is terminology and definitions, right? Like one side is common terms with completely different definitions, and the other side is not common terms with nobody knows what the hell what those words mean, right? So both have the problem, and that's where I think it's so for me, it's really about how do we analyze and look at these two different types of things. I like how William brought forward that, for depth, he likes to use MBTI on an individual level with it, whereas at group level, it's easier to do the strengths-based approach. I think that's also one way of looking at it because it depends on how you want to look at different things. Because I can reverse it the other way around too, because of like this person is introverted by nature. So therefore, if he brings up anything, he has to rest for the next 200 hours, right? So it might be the kind of little things that we might adjust along the way to adjust to different types of people. Or I let him send an email rather than meet people, which is a very wonderful approach. There are all these different things that we can do, right? So going further into the profiles and really understanding it, I think is the thing. I enjoyed it when William was noticing that what our focus was on the self-awareness. And I think that's what we are doing all this test for, to gain greater self-awareness, to gain certain amounts of understanding of self. I'm also looking forward to what my profiles will look like in 20 years time, because my strengths, if it's going to be stable, am I going to stay ENTP? I most definitely will, because people describe me as the same person that they've known my whole life. So I hope and I believe that I will still stay quite consistent to this. But at the same time, it's also because I found my way, and I can't, and we talked back to Alex's last point, which it goes back to strengths-based approach is always about anchoring to who you are and allowing that to be, right? MBTI, actually, the approach that I've learned was very similar. So that's why when you said that, I was like, that's MBTI's approach. If I'm ENTP, I should just accept that I'm ENTP, allow myself to stretch. But then when I have time, go back to ENTP, right? So I need to scream out loud, talk about everything before I regain energy. If I'm muted for too long, I will not be able to function. For example, right? Like recognizing that that's me is a normal part of the equation. And this is where I think we all agree. As long as we're allowed to be more me, right? Not me, but you, we all will get better. And that's what the psychometric tests are for. And these two tests give completely different dimensions, but are quite similar in terms of the philosophy if you know how to use it right.
I was very tempted to mute you, Ethan, when you said that if you mute me, I was like, okay, now mute. but we ran out of time, so that would have been fun to do, but hours of the Zoom owner. Okay, guys, thanks so much for joining us. I know we've overrun, but I think this topic really we can talk for much longer, and there's so many layers, right? We talk about it. We didn't even talk about how have we used it for coaching, or how have we used the profiling tools and all the different things. So do join us for our next one in 2 weeks' time. We're going to talk about, or rather, we're going to compare CliftonStrengths with DISC, right? So a different profiling tool, just so that we get kind of cover the landscape of profiling tools a little bit. And if you like to join, we have a strengths coaching fiesta that is coming in June. So in that, we're actually getting strengths coaches who's going to provide strengths coaching in a group context. So do let us know if you're interested, and we're going to run that on 26th of June. Please invite your friends. We want to make that a successful event. First time we're running it as part of the meetup group. Okay, cool. Thanks everyone.
Thank you, ladies.
We're going to stop the broadcast. See you. Please join us soon. Bye.
Thank you.